It's great to have you all here. It's great to see people interested in cutthroat. Cutthroat are become sort of almost a way of life more than just a way, a fishing type of thing. Me, myself, I started out angling as a lake angler, just trolling. I didn't even know how to cast. But I started out many years ago drowning worms in the Fraser and stuff like that. Just whatever would bite, that's what we would catch. And dug a lot of compost worms, stole a lot of bolts out of the old man's toolbox for weights and all that kind of stuff. And then in my mid-20s, a buddy of mine got me into fly fishing. So I had the Canadian Tire rod and the Shakespeare reel and all that stuff. And we fooled with it at some point or another to a great degree. Every year we did a little bit of fishing. Like we would go to Tonquah Lake and get blown to the other end of the lake, and then that would be our fishing for the day, right? We had a little rubber raft. We get about halfway out, and the wind would come up and blow us back, right? So, and then I joined the forum, Fly BC. It was Fish BC back then, and I ended up meeting a lot of nice people. And there's one fella that I met. His name was Alan Cox. And he's actually halfback on the forum. He's not on there much anymore. I'm still friends with him besides. But he used to talk about these fish, cutthroat, and he would get this faraway look on his face. And he really talked, with respect about these fish. And I thought to myself, I'd like to have that faraway look on my face too, So I started looking for these fish. And I don't know, are any of you guys cutthroat fishermen? Yeah. Are you finding success?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, see, and that's what happened with me. Me and Deb got together and we decided, okay, well, we're going to try and find these fish. And we didn't really know what we were up against. I don't know about you guys, but there's not a whole lot of information out about cutthroat. So we started, doing different things. And for us, the first thing that we did was we found a resource. And the one that we found was an old book from 1970, 72 maybe. It was called Hot Spots of the Upper Fraser Valley. And it talked about all these different things like the Pump House and Trammer's Bar and Mariah Slough and the Nickaman Slough. And it talked about all these different places. So we started going out and driving to these places and, looking around. We didn't know what we were looking for. We were told all the myths that you've been told. If cutthroat are there, they'll show. If you can throw anything at them, they'll bite. And as we went along and figured this and started doing this stuff, eventually here and there we caught a fish or two, and we had some success. And then one time I was on the board and I was talking about cutthroat, and we've caught some fish, and I was talking about cutthroat, and I received a PM. Private message, and it was a guy, he's first light on the board, Bruce Young, and he says, if you guys want to catch cutthroat, why don't you guys go to this spot and check it out? Now that's one thing that you're going to notice around this whole thing. I'm not going to tell you where to go, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you tools to find where you want to go, and you're going to have to do your own legwork. This becomes a hunt. This is almost more of a hunt than it is actually than catching the fish themselves. And what happened to me was I fell in love with the hunt. So I fell in love with getting up in the morning and walking for miles, driving for miles, following leads, all these different things. So anyways, this fella says, well, why don't you try this place? So I got out there and I started walking and looking around and walking, throwing cast here and there. And I came to this one spot in the river, and it was an opening, and the river was coming past, but it created this giant back eddy. You know where I'm talking, right? So it created this giant back eddy, like a big pool, and it was full of birds, right? And so I'm walking, and I'm looking, and I'm walking, looking forward, and I look, and I see splash, and I'm like, was that a bird? Is that a bird? And walking a little more, and I'm getting a little closer. I see another splash. That wasn't a bird. That wasn't a bird. But bird is the word, right? You show up to a spot, and you go, oh, and then about 40 seconds later, bird comes up. It's like, oh, it's not a fish, right? So get there, and I'm seeing stuff that's not birds. So I'm thinking, okay. So I get out there and I throw out a cast and start bringing it. Bang, I get a fish. And I'm like, oh, holy cow, I got a fish. You know, and back then, catching a fish at all was something. And then as I got there, the birds took off, right? After the first couple of casts, the birds took off and the water kept moving. And I was like, look at this, eh? So I threw out a cast, caught a fish, threw out another cast, caught another fish. I was like, look at this. I caught 5 fish. The fish were still moving. I couldn't catch them anymore, but I caught 5 fish. And I thought, holy cow, I've hit the mother lode. So once I took that spot and I realized what was happening there was it was a back eddy, right? So we all know as fishermen, we want to find places where fish want to hunt and want to have food brought to them. They're lazy like us. If I don't have to get out of bed and someone brings me breakfast, I'll stay in bed, right? They're the same way. So I've got some stuff here that I sort of got prepared here. I'm crappy at memorizing stuff, so I'm going to sort of paraphrase off this. But basically, anything I'm going to share with you guys is just my take on fishing for these fish. You know, I've been doing it for a long time. Like, my hair's turning gray right now as I stand in front of you guys, right? So I've been at it a long time. I started when I was about 35. I'm 60 now. So, and for the first couple of years, I wasn't finding much success. But the nice thing about finding success is people notice. And the people who notice cutthroat are other people who fish cutthroat. And eventually, it starts to open doors. There was nothing like this. There was nothing like seminars or anything like this dedicated to cutthroat. As a matter of fact, I think this may be the first one. You know, first type of thing. Because it's a difficult thing to talk about without telling you where to go, right? You know, and no one wants to tell. I started a group on Facebook when Facebook first came out. It's called the Cutthroat Cartel. And I had about 60 members, but nobody posted anything. They all came in and lurked and looked around, right, you know, and then came back. So, this is basically just a collection of experience that influenced me to approach this fishery as I do. I don't consider myself an expert. I'm a learner. You guys are probably all can teach me a whole lot of stuff. I know that those fish can teach me a lot of stuff, and I'm hoping to not only give you guys some tips to actually catch these fish, but to get excited about them, you know, because when you're holding these fish, I don't know if you were watching the slideshow at all, but there's some incredible fish out there, right? And each one from this big, like I'll fish these things in rainforest streams with a 2-weight or a 1-weight. And there's fish that don't grow any bigger than 8 inches and they live in a 24-inch long pool their entire lives. Whereas other ones will travel little, not too many, but other ones will travel literally 100 miles to go to a feed lot and then come back just like a salmon would. But for the most part, cutthroats sort of remain within 2 to 5 kilometers of where they were born. They will range within a system, right? So the sea run thing, like how this is sort of misnomered. There are sea run trout. There are fish that live in the ocean, and that's another thing. I'm going to try and touch on that depending on how much time we have. But I'm mostly lake, river, estuaries, and a slough fisherman. Okay? So, so if I can give you guys a leg up the right way, then I'm all for the evolution of a true angler. To me means a hands-on approach. That means you don't go on the internet and ask people how fishing is. You go out and go fishing, and people start asking you how fishing is, right? And I mean, I want you guys to get out there. I want you to get out there. I want you to get so cold that you appreciate being warm again. I want you to walk until you got a blister on the back of your heel because you'll know that you need better boots. Get out there, roast a weenie on a fire beside the river. Get muddy, you know, get in there, immerse yourself in it, okay? And again, this comes down to enjoying the hunt as much as the fish. The fish is the reward at the end of the hunt. And I've spent a lot of days, I've been doing this a long time, and Johnny was out day before yesterday. And he sent me a text. He says, tell him it ain't easy. I got skunked yesterday. And John's a top-notch angler. He's a top line, world class, right? Okay, so hang on a second here. Okay, but there's a reason that you can't find much information on the internet. It's true cutthroat fisher people don't talk about it. They're out there doing it. You'll see pictures, but they're cropped down to like an eyeball or something like that. You know, there's a couple of good sites on Facebook. Cutthroat Trout is one. It's really good. They don't even, if you put up a picture of a fish and say this came from the Harrison, they'll take it down. They don't even want to hear the system. They want to see the picture of the fish, maybe what you caught it on, share some flies, but they will not talk system. And I think that's a good thing. And I think a big part of my success is, remember I said that people started to notice, was getting like-minded people and creating a ring. Like we used to have the Cutthroat Cartel. There's about a half dozen of us. Oh, I was here and I saw him here. Or, oh, they were here, but I couldn't catch them. And we would go out and see what we could do about that, right? Type of thing. So, okay, so basically, I guess what I'm saying is this isn't just show up to the river and go fishing and catch fish. This is more along the lines of doing legwork and all those things that are required to familiarize with the system. You can get lucky. You can fish once every 2 or 3 months, and you can get lucky. I know guys like that. Sometimes I am that guy, right? But to really not only get what these fish are, but to become successful and become consistent is to surround yourself with people, get out there and fish, get yourself a couple of 3, 4 good patterns that you really believe in. And my patterns are good, but there's other guys out there that have really good patterns that do just as good as me. And it's more, I think, about the belief in the retrieve than it is actually the pattern itself and where we're putting it. Okay? Okay, so since they range so far and wide, and they can be caught in 1,000 different ways, in multiple types of water, from little rainforest trickles to rivers like the mighty Fraser itself, as well as giant lakes, Harrison Lake, sloughs, small rivers. Fly fishing, you can fish for them size-wise, anything from a 2 weight all the way up to a 7 or 8 weight. If you get into those fjord lakes like in Powell River and stuff like that, get a hold of Patches D, and you can catch yourself a cutthroat that's 10 pounds possibly, or even better. I mean, they're in there in those lakes, right? You can swing flies for them. You can catch them on dry flies. You can throw poppers and pull them across the surface. They'll chase them down. I find that's more effective in the salt water when you get into the evening and they come in numbers. So you can use a sink tip, you can use a floating line, you can pull flies, you can upstream nymph for them because they're available in all these different venues, right? And hopefully with some of the tools that I give you, I'm going to help you find which venue is going to be best at different times a year, right? I mean, right now, the fish are still probably going to take an egg pattern. They're going to take flesh, right? These fish are very dependent on the migration of salmon for the most part, okay? So I'm fanatical, so I fished pretty much all these venues and had, at least some degree of success. What I'm saying basically is you can fish them in whatever your preferred method is, as long as you pick the water that's going to match your preferred method. If you like to cast long line and retrieve, then you want to be in a slough situation or a lake situation or even the ocean situation where you've got a slow water. Although the ocean has its own currents too. Rather than water coming down, we've got it moving in and out. So that's why when you go to an ocean spot, you go there one time and you got fish there and there's moving around, but they're not the next time. You got to think things like tides. Tides are very important, especially in the lower mainland, all the way up to the stave. It affects how the water moves. As the water moves up, it slows down. As it falls, it runs faster. So this is going to make these fish move into different venues to be effective as feeders, right? Or even move in and out of the system too. I'm not going to tell you when that is. That's up to you guys to find, right? I'm not going to tell you which tides are best. But like just take for a quick example, in an ocean situation, again, I'm going to look for somewhere that's going to give me a back eddy, okay? So basically, we're going to create two seams, and the fish are going to pick one or the other and just pick things out, just like in a river. In a river, they'll sit behind a rock and pick things out as they go by. The ocean, they will do the same thing. So to me, an ocean place would be a place with a creek and a place that has a back eddy, and the big one is if I can get one that has a back eddy going both tides. Then I'm going to find a place that's going to habituate cutthroat, especially if that creek, I mean, it doesn't have to have salmon to pull them in because there's a lot of stuff coming out of creeks at all times, right? But having a creek there is just something that has the cutthroat habituating. Chances are they're spawning and they're living in that creek, and they're going to stay within close to where they are for the most part. They will range, right? They'll range throughout a system. Okay, so I fished some big river systems. I fished the Harrison. That's a nice big river system. It's not very long, right? But it's got lots of little areas and boats. So I'll fish from the boat in that case. I like to pull the boat up on shore and walk and be able to control the drift. But the boat also affords you the ability to fish from deeper water to shallow water, and sometimes that can be effective too. So some of these pictures you'll see that we're going to run through here, you'll see that some are in the boat, some the boat's behind me, some are in grass, some are in rocks, some are in sloughs. There's going to be some places here probably that I'm going to show on this that some of you guys are going to recognize. Feel free not to shout them out, but put them in your hip pocket. These are places that you might want to fish, okay? So basically, now, what are they, okay? They're a trout, okay? Let's go into the Latin name. It's Cutthroat Troutius. Okay, it's not. I've read the Latin name a bunch of times. That's not something that I've hung on to. That's not something that's not required to love cutthroat. But basically, they range from southern Alaska to somewhere down in mid-California. I've always sucked at geography, right? I suck at that in Jeopardy. I'm a big Jeopardy fan, but my geography sucks, right? So they're about halfway down to California. I think the furthest place they range in is up to 150 kilometers, and that's up in the Skeena system. They actually go right up to the headwaters of the Skeena system, right? But like I was saying before, as a rule, they don't really range that far from their home except for certain different areas. Now, when you're fishing for cutthroat, nowadays here, you're fishing for wild fish. So that means barbless. It means you got to let them go. You're not going to keep them anymore. They stopped the stocking program. Does anybody know when it was? Like, it's got to be 8 years ago now. Yeah. So there are a couple of. I was talking with Rodney Zoo from Fishing with Rod, and I think there are a couple of places where they have done a little bit of cutthroat enhancement, and they are still putting fish in. But for the most part, you're going to be fishing for wild fish. Another thing, before I forget, another thing that this is going to help you with, and what I'm going to try and share with you, is cutthroat and coho are very similar. They like the same places. They like the same flies. Chum as well, so you got to be careful. But they like the same flies. They like the same presentations. And everything that I'm going to tell you now is going to help you as a coho fisherman as well. Okay, so I just wanted to relate a little story. Kelly Davidson, everybody know that name? Anybody? Yeah, he ran Sea Run Fly and Tackle for a long time. He was a big-time guide, and he's a cutthroat addict. Just like, can't count the number of times I got to go, but then we would be talking, and then the store's closing, and I had to go, right? So, but he told me this story one time. He says, cutthroat are an amazing fish. If you take a salmon parr that's in fresh water and you put it in salt water, it'll go into shock. It'll sort of twitch out and sort of sit around for a little while, and then in a few minutes it will acclimatize. A cutthroat, if you take it out of fresh water, and put it into salt water, makes no difference. It'll just keep swimming. And then you can take it out of this salt water and put it back in the fresh water. Makes absolutely no difference. So they're like, they got something weird going on with them, right? A friend of mine says, I mean, you will run across fish in 40-degree water, where most fish are just hunkered on the bottom, and I'm not going to really. And they roll in a school of 30 of them, and they're just rolling and slashing. And it's like my buddy says, I don't know how they do it. It's freezing out there, right? But these fish can get on and be aggressive even in cold water temperatures. Okay, as a rule, they'll travel in numbers, okay? Now, these are rules which are made to be broken, right? Okay, you find one, you find a bunch, okay? One thing I can tell you, after 20 years of really concentrating on these fish, I keep learning every day I wet a line. You can catch one, you can catch 25. You can be in the middle of 25 and not be able to touch any of them. It's the strangest thing. So that goes back to that, if you throw a fly at a cutthroat, he'll eat it because they're aggressive. Yeah, sure, for the most part. But until you've seen it with your own eyes, and I was telling Johnny about this fishery that we have, and we go there and we slay. And then it gets to a certain point where there's so many fry out there that they get picky. So in the afternoon, I took them there because we went to another spot. It wasn't producing. It was hot to go there. I says, okay, well, let's go there. Actually, he wanted to go there. I says, well, the fish will be there, but you won't be able to catch them. And he gives me the, yeah, whatever. So we got there, and sure enough, they were everywhere. We were putting flies on fish. We were leading fish. Nothing. There was one dude that was across the river. He caught one fish, and then that was it. And then he was doing the same thing we were. He got lucky, okay? So forage-wise, it's a trout, okay? So basically, you want to go back to your rainbows and whitefish, bull trout. These are all going to be fish that you're going to catch bycatch fishing for cutthroat too. You want to be using insects. If we're fishing in the summertime and the higher water, you want to go back to insects. I mean, let's pull some flies for sure, like get streamers moving and stuff like that. But if you see fish what looks like feeding on midges, chances are they are. I mean, I know guys that in the Nickerman system catch them on chironomids consistently, and the occasional carp even. But I mean, they catch them on chironomids consistently. In rivers like the Harrison, the clear rivers that have these good hatches, mayflies, caddises, chironomids, midges if you're English. All those things have a place. Minnow patterns. The muddler minnow is a great fly. Me, for some reason, whenever I use that muddler minnow, the wing always gets wrapped up on me. So this is part of the reason why I started coming up with my own flies, because I got some weird wanky thing that when I bring the fly back, somehow that wing always goes around the hook. So I just like, and throw something else on, right? Okay, so if you got enough still water, you can even use like the deer hair gomphus, right? Fish a little bit quicker sinking line and use a deer hair gomphus. If you move over into the salt, then now all of a sudden we've got everything from needlefish and anchovies all the way down to crab larvae. So I mean, you can see how all of a sudden this would probably get you really going at the vise and visiting all the fly shops and also the Interact machine too, because once we start opening up all of our options here. But see, another thing that you want to do out of all this stuff that you gather, just like any other fly tire, I have I have lots of boxes of flies, lots and lots of them, but I'm probably only going to fish between 4 and 6 flies because I've got confidence patterns and they're going to help me out. If I know there's fish there, that's when we got to start changing. We got to start changing it up, right? Okay, so I was humming and hawing. I was writing all this stuff down, and as you can see, I haven't got that good of a memory, so I'm going to have to prompt myself. So I had to think of a way to think of how to tell you guys what I do without forgetting anything. So what I decided I'd do is I'd take you fishing. So we're just going to go with fresh water for now. We'll talk, hopefully if we got enough time, we'll talk a little bit about salt water as well. So barring salt water, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to get up real early, okay? And how early I get up is dependent on how far away I got to drive to get there, okay? And the only thing that changes about that for salt fishing is tides. I can go to some of these rivers that do better in better tides, like the Stave. Stave is a very tidal river that I can do better in, but I'm still going to go early in the morning there and then play out the day and try and catch the best tide. I will actually look at the tide tables. The tide table, getting a good tide table for your area and be able to extrapolate from there is really going to really help you. And also, don't believe the tide table. Look at the tide table, go there and make sure that it's doing, because it may be from a different place and you might have an hour or a half hour's difference, okay? So if I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to get up early, and I'm going to try and get to my destination quite early. It's not because the fish are early risers. It's because as anglers, the longer that light is going through the water column, the less the fish can see my flies. Now, I'm not the best fly tyer there is, so that works good for me, right? So all these flies that I use, or 90% of them, I'm an impressionistic tyer. What I want to do is I want to have something in there that they're going to notice and they're going to chase. So I'm going to get up early. I'm going to get to the water and have it so that I put as much in my favor as I possibly can. That long light, that's a big thing. I want that in my favor, especially if it's flat. If it's piss on a plate calm, I want that long light, because as the light starts coming on, it's just like anything else. I don't know if you fished at noon and fishing was good in the morning, it's good in the evening, but from about 11 o'clock till about 3 o'clock, it's not so good because that light is down. But what works for us in the fall time and in the springtime, the light's lower on the horizon. The sun doesn't rise up that high. So we've got longer light to begin with, okay? So when I go, I'm going to bring my rod of choice. Me, myself, I like a 9-foot 4-weight. I'm going to use, in my case, most of the time, most of the places I fish, I use a slow sinking ghost tip, 12 to 15 feet. And then maybe 6 to 8 feet a leader. I'll pull 4 feet of 8, 4 feet of 6, and that's good. And then I'll tie on to that. If I'm using a floating line, I'll probably go up to a 12 to 14 foot leader, just because I don't want that disturbance of the tip close to the fly. As for 6 pound, if I'm nymphing, I'll go with 4 pound, because when I'm nymphing, I want as much drop through the water column as I can. The larger the diameter of the tippet, the more drag it's going to have. So I want small tippet for that. But when I'm fishing for cutthroat, when I'm casting and retrieving, I want 6 pound, a couple of reasons. A lot of times there's salmon around. I want a chance to get my hook back. There's a cutthroat like cover. They like sticks, they like grass, they like logs, like all those things. So the more courageous you are with your cast, and the closer you can get in there, right, the better off you are, right? Because these guys, they like to hide in that stuff, right? When they're not schooling and on the feed, they like to be where it's hard to get to for some reason. And you'll know if you're coho fish, that's the same thing too, right? You'll have that same deal. So I'll have a 9-foot rod, I'll have a floating line, and depending on the venue, I may go to a venue where I can cast long line, and then I can also nymph as well, so I will carry 2 rods. And my vest, you'll see in some of the pictures, I'm going to bring some of those pictures up because I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But on my vest, you've seen this, eh? There's a little loop down here. I'll stick the butt of the rod in here, and then bring it across here, and then staple it to me. Now I can cast, and this part of the rod's out of my way, and you'll see some pictures of that. So getting back to what cutthroat are, before we get too far here, I just want to show you some pictures so that you can see sort of both why I love these fish, and show you some of the faces of them and what they can look like. And then also to give you an idea about how to identify what we got going on here. This fish was caught in a slough. It was taken by a good friend of mine, Richard Chalk. He's Morris on the board. And it's just such the epitome of cutthroat. Here you can see in this picture, you can see the slashes, the classic slash. You can see, for me, the slash is not indicative of a cutthroat, and I've got a few pictures here to help you see that. To me, the cutthroat is this maxillary going so far past the eye. That's the easiest way that you can identify a cutthroat when you've got it. People talk about hybrid cutthroat. I've never caught like a hybrid cutthroat here. I don't know if it happens here. Maybe it does. Possibly it does. I've never run into anybody who says, oh, I got some cut bows. I don't think that it happens here. It may be. But for the most part, that maxillary going past the eye is your easiest identifying trait of a cutthroat. There's something else that they have that's called brachial teeth. Look at me knowing a big word, eh? Brachial teeth, which are teeth on top of the tongue. So on the back. So I don't know, I've seen them a couple of times, but it's hard to like look in there. But that's the other thing that for sure that cutthroat have that rainbow trout don't. See, now this is a good picture of Johnny. We're at the Vetter, and this isn't actually, we're hoping for cutthroat, but there's not very many cutthroat in the Vetter. But this is a good instance where you can see John, he's got his one rod, that's his streamer rod, and he's working this top with the nymph, and he's basically keeping it high sticked and letting it drop down into the water column. And what he's trying to do is pop it into that water, and as it comes in, drop it right into that hole there. Because the fish are nosing up, and they're going to get in front of each other. So if he can get it to drop right off, the aggressive fish is going to take that right away, right? So let's get into here. There's another, like, see, we're seeing, these are all the same species, right? You know, that's a white fish. This is a male fish. I caught this fish in Harrison Lake. I caught the female afterwards, which is in here as well afterwards, which is quite interesting. I caught the female first. That fish came in, and it went right around me, and I went and I looked at it, and it rolled once in front of me, and it took off, and I thought, that's the last time I'm ever going to see that, because, I mean, these things can be powerful, okay? So there's Johnny and I with the double header. Another cutthroat. See, again, here we've got the blushing bride. This was caught on an egg pattern in a running river, nymphing, right? So we call it check egging. So there's check nymphing. Well, we upstream with the eggs, and we pull them back. So we're not going to get too much into techniques and stuff like that. Now this is a rainbow, and you can see here where the maxillary is more in line with the back of the eye rather than traveling past. Now there's be some pictures of cutthroat in there with the mouth open, and it's a little hard to tell. You have to trust me. This is another Harrison fish. This is my buddy Tim. He caught this fish, wonderful fish. The opening of that net is 18 inches. It's probably about that big around. Real nice fish, and that was streamer fishing. And you can tell, like this fish here, if I had told somebody it was from the ocean, it's so bright, you would believe it, because I can, there's Deb. This is in the Harrison itself too. That's another 17-inch fish, really stout. This is on the island. Again, these are cutthroat trout. These are all the same trout. So they've got some very beautiful. This was taken on an egg pattern. This is in the ocean. Again, I don't know if I can you guys see that? Yeah. See, there you can see the slash. You can see the blush on the side. Spots from top to bottom, spots on the fins, even spots on the anal fin there. So I'm just going to run through a few more here. See there, that's a bright fish. There were no slashes on that. But you can see again that maxillary coming so far past the eye, right? That's one of your best identifying marks. This is a rainbow. You can see where that lines up with the back of the eye. It's just to give you an idea. Again, we fish from the boat. This is a salt run cutthroat. I like showing this one because this is a beautiful fish. That's probably my second or third biggest fish I've ever tagged in the salt. It was a situation we waiting, and we had that long, slow, sloping beach, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. Crocodile fly, another egg eater. This was in the Fraser. This is a post-spawn fish. You can tell that this fish looks like it should be heavier, and it is because it's spawned already. The fish will spawn anywhere from December all the way through May, but usually it's probably from about late February to the beginning of April. That's going to be where the real concentrated of spawning fish are. Okay, so remember I said I'm going to have a 9-foot rod? I'm also going to have this guy. As a cutthroat angler, you're spending a lot of time on the move. Now, there's a lot of guys that don't like stripping baskets. That's cool if you don't like stripping baskets. But when you're in a slough, you've got a pile of line on the ground. You see that fish roll, it's 30 feet away, 40 feet away, whatever it is. You make that back cast, you throw it, it's a beautiful cast, and all of a sudden it goes, and slinkies back and lands 10 feet in front of you because it hit a piece of grass on the ground. With this basket, and you can see inside it's got cones in it, because when you lay the line in there, it helps it from falling on top of itself. So if I'm using this basket, the first strip I'll make is outside the basket. And then the rest of it, I will strip into the basket. Because if I strip it right into the basket right away, when I lift the cast, I'm going to lift that line off these cones. And then I'm much more prone to have a knot, right? Okay? So this turns me into a spin fisherman instantly. I can have 50, 60, 70 feet of line in here and be walking with it, with the fly in my hand, and see a fish rise and be able to run over it and take a cast. If you got a stripped line off there and this and that, the fish is gone before you've got a chance. So this is one of my greatest tools for this fishery. And I use it in the ocean. I use it in the sloughs. I'll take this belt off here. I'll use this when I'm lake fishing. I'll put an inch of water in the bottom for my sinking lines, because the sinking lines, as you know, are thin to give you that sink rate. This will help aid with that. Even if it doesn't all go in, I'll just strip it in the general direction. It'll help me manage that line. And once you become a proficient caster and you can manage a lot of line, you want to be able to utilize it, right? I mean, myself, I can cast like 30 feet. And I want to be able to have that full cast complement. And that's one of the reasons that I don't like fishing in the tube anymore, because I strip so much line and I can't handle it on top of the apron. So that's why. So this is one of your best tools. Another thing that I like, I wear a vest. And again, because of the stripping basket, that's part of it. But also, I'm an old school dude, right? This one's got a nice yoke on it, right? It's going to carry everything that I want. It's got lots of pockets. But the best thing about this thing is the net. To handle these fish, you want to have a net. They're wild. You want to let them go. I mean, you can just bring them up and use a hook release thing, but I like to bring them into the net to have a look. And what I've done here is I'm so skookum. I've got the magnet, and you see how I put it off center? That way, when I'm wearing this, the handle's sticking off to the left for me, so I can just reach over and grab it, and it's ready to go. On the end of it, I'm so sophisticated that I tied a bootlace. This is one of my old bootlaces, and I've been using this. You can see I've tied it together and stuff like that. But what it enables me to do is be able to hold this, drop it in the water. If the fish isn't about to come in, then I can reach down, grab it, put it in, and then reach back and put it back on. If it drops off, it's going to drag behind me, catch on the thing, and let me know that I'm losing my net, right? So, so these are two really, as far as I'm concerned, a real necessary tool. And you'll see that even here, because where I'm fishing, I haven't even reeled up the line. It's still in the basket. I want to be ready. If I see a fish roll, I want to be able to grab that thing and take a cast right from there if I have to, right? Now, we're just going to leave this up here for a minute. How did I know to fish there? That's a huge lake, right? How did I know to fish there? Well, you can do a few things to put finding locations in your favor. First of all, a creek. A creek is a good thing. A creek is a good thing. Even if it doesn't hold fish spawning salmon, a creek is a very good thing. The other thing that I want to have is a long sloping beach. Slow gradiate, maybe with some pockets in there as well. Because cutthroat are like wolves. They will come along in a pack of, 2 or 3 or 5, up to 10, 15, maybe even 30 fish when it gets crazy. But they come on, and what they will do is they will gather forage in, and they will herd it towards shore. And when they're doing that, as they're coming towards shore, the bottom's coming away, and the fish no longer, the forage can't go up or down. All they can do is go left or right. So now all of a sudden they've created. So they will literally move in, push forage in, and then have others come in from the side. And the guys who push things forward, they get the benefit of that because the ones that come in, they will come in and stun fish, and they can pick up the ones that they missed. So they sort of work in a cohesive group in certain instances. This is when you can run across. So they really like that graduated. So this particular area happens to have a place just like that, right? So then we started haunting it. Now, once you start finding these places, you got to fish them. And just because you didn't catch a fish here this time, doesn't mean you're not going to catch a fish here next time. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to catch a fish here 15 minutes from now. I cannot count how many times I was in a spot and I'm moving this way, and I think to myself, just something in me says, you should go back over there and have a look and go back and have success. There's a fish moving, or there I'm a cast. If you catch a fish in a spot, it goes on the list. And you go back. Remember what I said? Cutthroat move. They don't always move. You go to a spot, you fish it. You go to a spot and you fish it. And that comes down to the other thing that I'm going to have is I'm going to have a few patterns that I have confidence in that if I cover water with them, I'm going to have some sort of result. I may not. I may suck that day. The fish may not be into that. But what I'm going to have is I'm going to have confidence that once I've fished this piece of water, that I've had a reasonable chance of success and I can move on. Okay? And again, if it's a spot, it deserves being looked at time and time again. So that means you can hit a spot on the way out and then come back and hit that same spot on the way back, whether you're driving or whether you're walking. And because they are gypsies. They here today, gone tomorrow, or they're not here, but wait a minute, right? It's all up to them. So I'm going to look for a sloping area. I'm going to look for a creek. I'm going to pay attention to spawning salmon. Cutthroat, being a minnow eater and a toothy bugger, they've got lots of teeth. I've got lots of cuts on me from them, right? When you get into the larger sizes especially. They're just trying to figure out a way to say this. Okay, let's just leave that for a second here. Let me just go through here. I just want to see, again, this is why we go. I mean, every time you catch a fish, like when I started that, there's a thing that I called them jewels because they have so many different faces and they're so gorgeous. That's a Fraser fish. Now, I don't know if you noticed anything when we're going through these pictures. 90% of these things I'm wearing rain gear. It's raining. It's gloomy. Because that goes along with that I want to have everything in my favor. So if I've got low light and I've got rain, a little bit of wind, too much wind isn't too good. I mean, if you can fish in it, chances are they bring it up. If you that picture back here, this picture here, look at the ocean. It's absolutely, I had to pound that line in there. But what that condition does for me in the ocean is it allows the fish to come up shallow and feel safe in there. The other thing that pushes cutthroat up shallow are seals. So that's going to be another clue for you in the ocean. If it's not salmon season, and it's not steelhead season, and there's not too many of those things anymore, those seals are there because there's cutthroat around, right? So that can help you. It can be bad too. I mean, they can be coming up and swimming right in front of you, and it sucks, right? But that they will also give you a chance to have those fish pushed in so that they come in and they feel, and then if you have a condition like this, they're going to feel safe. So anyway, so I'm going to find a creek. I'm going to look for a sloping bottom. In a slough situation, I'm going to look for pockets. I'm going to look for places where it's deeper. The slough's a little tougher because you're going to probably want to walk until you see bottom. But see, again, sloughs and estuaries are sort of magical places. That's what cleans up our Fraser River. And this is where tides can help you too. Let's just take, for instance, not the Stave, what's that river? I'm blanking out. The pit system, the lower pit system. That's a tidal system. Moves up, moves down. Well, there's sloughs along there, and the water comes in, and it's all dirty, okay? And then it starts rolling out, and what happens in those sloughs, they're all full of grass and weeds and reeds and stuff. It filters that water. So when it comes back out, it's clean, or cleaner at least than what came in. So what happens when you get back to the main stem, you've got a sluice of clean water coming into this dark water. And those fish love that, right? Because they can get into the clean water, see the stuff that's coming through them, and that's another place where you want to be able to. So estuaries, confluence is a good word. Wherever you have a couple of bodies of water meeting, you get things like dugout bottoms, and which create pools and stuff like that, which in turn create back eddies and things like that. You get hooked corners where a river's a slough or another smaller river meets a bigger river. You get a hooked corner, which creates a perfect lie for a fish to sit there and pick things off, be it coming out or going in. So these estuaries, and these are also the rearing grounds, right? So in the springtime, you want to go to where it's weedy and it's reedy, because that's where the little tiny bugs are, and that's where these salmon fry are going to go, and that's where they're going to go to bulk up. And it's just like anything in. If you want to catch lions, you go to where the deer or to where the antelopes are. Well, if we want to catch cutthroat, we want to go to where the forage is. We want to go to where the fry are. We want to, I will fish in egg season. I will fish, it's nerve-wracking, but I will fish right through chum salmon. Like, I will throw my fly right in there and lead it through these chum salmon. And you'd be amazed, remarkably, how often you don't snag, because you're not, when I'm nymphing, I'm using a straight up and down presentation. So I'm not laying it across the back of these fish. I'm throwing it up and leading it down, right? So in that instance, I can get right in behind them. And these fish are there gobbling. I've literally seen cutthroat coming up in a clear water condition where I'm looking through the water and I'm seeing the fish come up and bump the underside of these chum and push the eggs out and turn around and eat them, okay? So I'm going to get to this spot, and I'm going to cast far. I'm going to cast as far as I can. And I learned to cast myself. I don't recommend it. It took me many, many years. If you can, get a casting lesson. Get a friend that knows. Spend some money on it even. You know, I never did, and I regret it now. But I'm going to want to cast far. And it may not be because the place is wide. It may be because of my restrictions of the venue. I may not be able to wade to where I can get, right? But if I can cast far enough, I can have, say, a 20-foot out of a 70-foot cast where I'm retrieving and in the game, and then I'm in the weeds. I got to pull back, clean off the fly, and get it. But I'm able to, with a good cast, get in there and get it there. My fly, especially in the morning, is going to have a bead. I'm not much of a tungsten bead for cast and retrieve. For Johnny, for sure. I don't know how he doesn't snag all the time, but a lot of his flies have tungsten beads. But I like the brass bead. I like that plop. Cutthroat are aggressive in a lot of instances. So that plop will literally have a fish going, what was that? You know what I mean? Like literally, I cannot count how many times that I've thrown a fly out there and I'm just tightening up and the fish is there. He's seen it and he's on it because they're competitive. The best scenario you can run into is multiple fish. You got one, you got a chance. But if you got two or three and one looks, they're conditioned to say, no, mine. So a lot of times you will catch the smaller fish because there's a big fish he's considering. The other one goes, no, mine, right? Yeah. So I'm going to cast long, and I'm going to retrieve. And I'm a big fan of changing the retrieve before I change the fly. I don't really change a fly unless I see a reason to. Like if I've thrown a fly to a fish and he's refused it. Like I've put it on, not even one, especially in a slough situation. Usually when a fish rises, you have no way to know which way he went. So you don't know if you're refused. But if you put that fly on two or three or have the opportunity to put that fly on two or three or four different fish, then you got a pretty good idea that it's time to maybe try something different. And fishing with a partner, use two different flies. Have your two confidence flies out, your best ones out, and fish two different flies, and then you can get two different results. So I'm going to throw that fly out, I'm going to have it plop, and I'm going to get tight right away. I don't care how much you flub the cast, get straight, because when a fish takes a fly on the slack and he can run, he's got the biggest chance to snap you off. He gets a run at it, right? I'm going to start retrieving, and my basic retrieve is usually about 1.5 feet to 2 feet, and what I'm trying to do is just stay in contact with the fly and bring it along. And that's my searching. That's my searching. So I've got that basket off to the side and I'm pulling and just dropping it right into that basket. It might be hanging out a little bit, but it's going on top of each other. At the end of my cast, Cutthroat will follow. They will follow, they will follow, they will follow. I cannot tell you. I just wanted to relay a little story. How shallow will Cutthroat go? I don't know if you guys are ready for this one. I came to my favorite beach one morning. The light was behind me. And I'm walking up to the thing, and there's a roll on the water. So the waves are coming in, they're curling about this high. You know, a wave comes up and it curls all the way along, and then the next wave comes and it curls along the beach. Well, I'm walking up, and the light is just perfect. And I look, and there's a 14-inch cutthroat inside the curl of that wave. So in other words, he's above the sand, and he's following that curl. Literally, like, I'm pretty sure he's looking at me. Like, I can see his eye. I'm just like, you know what I mean? So these fish will travel shallow. They will follow shallow. They will forage shallow. If I'm in a high-pressured area, like there's a few places I fish that they seize a lot of anglers. And I know that they follow. And I think a lot of times guys don't get fish because the fish sees you. They're used to coming in and not seeing anything, and then they see you and they take off. So I will be down here. I will cast standing up, but I will literally get down here. I don't know if Johnny can't do it. He can't get down on his knees like this, but I still can, right? So I will stay low. And I showed that to Johnny's son, Tyler, and he went to a competition, and he won his session. And he told his dad, he says, yeah, I pulled a total Randy on him. I went down on my hands and knees, and you know, yeah. But seriously, I really feel that that's effective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that fly in until I've got about 10 feet of line out, and I'm going to start lifting the rod. And we call it the hang. And it's actually, I've been doing it for years, but this actually works in still waters, and I encourage you to do this in still waters. Bring that fly in and hang it. Just lift. Lift. Let it sit there. Try not to disturb the fly. Strip the fly down and lift. And we usually start with about a 15-foot hang. And that's why there's hang markers. When you buy these new lines, they've got a marker at 5 feet, marker at 10 feet, and a marker at 15 feet. So you can start, okay, I'm going to hang it at 15 and see what happens. Hang it at 10 and see what happens. But basically what I do is I bring the fly in so that I can see it. And then I look behind it. And you would not believe how many times there's a fish there. And just like when you're stillwater angling, when you bring that fly back, you will have no idea how often there is a fish considering your fly right at the boat. They're just not making a decision, right? And that hang is a seriously good tool. So again, I'm going to cast out, I'm going to have a plop, I'm going to do my retrieve, I'm going to bring it in, and then I'm going to lift the rod and make sure I see the fly, and then start the cast. Now this is why this type of fishing, as well as coho for my type of fishing, aren't as good for the spey rod, hey? Because after you bring that all in, you got to get that whole head out. And so now you're smashing the water and stuff like that. Hey, you might as well just have set off a gun and got rid of all the fish, because a lot of the times where you're fishing is small venue, right? And soft water, right? So, and then now, cutthroat can be aggressive. And now that retrieve that I do, that's my searching retrieve. So I'm just going to stay tight and just make sure I'm moving. I'm trying to keep the fly from off the bottom, keep it clean. That's the nice thing about these particular patterns here as well. The synthetic woolly buggers, they tend to stay a little cleaner. It's like a blob. I don't know if you ever fish blobs in the weeds. They tend to come back cleaner than most other flies. That's why I like them, especially in the fall with the fish are up shallow. I can bring it back, feel a weed, and go, yeah, I'm still good, kind of thing, right? You know, and that's why these flies are good too. So I remember being with Richard, the guy who did that first fish. We were at a venue. We're casting, and we're seeing the occasional fish, but we're not getting any hits. So I throw out the fly, and I'm thinking, I should change that. So I start stripping it in, and all of a sudden I felt pluck. And I was like, huh. So don't change the fly. I throw it out. I start stripping in. I have a pluck, 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 pluck. I'm like, oh, okay. Well. So now I throw it out there, and I'm, bam! And they're taking it. And it's this like, so we spent the whole day, I'm telling you, my arm was sore, but we were catching fish like you wouldn't believe. And there's a picture of one of the fish that I caught. Just absolutely like this and rotund, eh? And it was all because I decided to change the fly and started bringing it in faster. Just like in lakes, I don't know if you guys fish lakes. I started with lakes. Cutthroat can be taken on everything from that, just keeping it moving, to sticking the rod underneath your arm and two hands, just as fast as you can. Now Johnny uses that retrieve a little bit differently. Have you ever been in a boat and just trolling is working? You troll, you're getting fish, and then you anchor, you start casting and retrieving, you're not getting fish. If you cast that out and put it underneath your line, you can become a troller with two hands, right? You know what I mean? So that way you can keep that consistent movement of the fly that trolling with the boat can give you. So that's what Johnny does. But I mean, we also take and we spin it up roly-poly, just like for coho. That's a coho retrieve. Again, they go back and forth quite well, cutthroat and coho, right? So I'm going to, I'm going to fish with my patterns, and then I'm going to move on. And if I'm in the boat, I'm going to pull up anchor and move to the next spot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that list of spots that we were talking about earlier, and I'm going to create a ring. Okay, and there's several areas that I fish in the Lower Mainland, and each one to me has its own ring attached to it, right? There's different spots that I will hit. There's ones that have been better to me than others in the past, so that if I spend too much time at this one, I have in my mind what I'm going to cut, right? But, and eventually, you sort of get on the pulse of these fish. I haven't been doing it for a little while. I just come back for a little while. I've been out a couple of times. I've been skunked once, got some dirty coho another time, and I hooked 2 other fish. So I'm off the pulse. But eventually, by the time I leave here in January, I'm hoping that I have a little bit of a pulse going on and I'm back in the groove. Because it's like you go here, but while you're there, you're wondering how they're doing over here. And then, you know, so you start playing this little mind game with yourself type of thing, right? So, late day fishing can be as good as early day fishing, because again, we have that long light. The exception here is when we have an abundance of food. When it's fry time, Get there early, get fishing early. Because when there's a lot of them, when there's a lot of fry, they feed up and they get full and then they get picky. Sometimes I think they're playing with your fly. Like I've had my fly batted before. Not caught any fish, just throwing it out there and they're moving everywhere. But they bat the fly, right? Just for something to do. And I think they egg each other on into it. It's that competition thing. So let me just roll through here a little bit. Yeah, that's another island fish. Okay, so this fish here and this fish here are similar lengths. But this fish, it was early in the egg season. This fish was caught in the lower mainland. That's probably about 22 inches long and chubby, right? So this is later on in the season where he's been eating everything. That's the ocean. Remember I told you I caught that female that go with the male? I think that's my largest fish out of the Harrison. I'm a little guy, but I got pretty big hands. I can't, that fish was enormous, right? That's another Harrison fish. Now this is the number 9. When I first came up with it, it's a little full. I had a podcast out, and there's one guy that I forgot to mention about this fly. Was Tadu Oyashi. That's how this sort of fly started. Besides with the gold underbody with Bruce Young, it was he had a fly called the TNT. It just had a flash blue tail, and it had that. Palmer chenille, he'd take 2 pieces and he'd twist it together and then just wrap that up. But I was going through that material like crazy, right? So I was like, well, man, I'd like to. So, and then I started using underbodies, and that was the key. The gold for the number 9 that I use and everything like that, that's probably the top of that. But use a baby blue underbody, coho love it. Use a green underbody. I've had black work. I've had orange work. Copper was really good. Before I came up with this, with the pink tail, I used to use flash blue in the tail, but the copper underbody was really good. And also, tied some of these without a bead too, just with the red thread head, because sometimes you get in areas, like I remember one time I had a couple in the box, and now I always do, because I forgot to put the bead on when I started tying the fly. And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah. So, but it really saved me because I could fish with the sink tip and even shallower water, and the fish happened to be there, and they were happy with it. That's my biggest sea run cutthroat. That was in Seashell. Now, let's talk a little bit about catching fish. When I'm retrieving a fly, especially when it's long line, my rod tip's in the water. As a matter of fact, I can probably take my hand off and just let the cork handle sit on there because the tip is laying on the line. And that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, I want to be able to feel when a fish touches the fly. And I don't want my rod to be dipping. I want to feel that right here. I want to feel that right on my stripping finger, okay? Second of all, if I have my rod tip up above the water, when I make a pull on a retrieve, what happens? It's thin and it dips. So now any action that I impart to the fly is muffled. Whereas if I put it in the water and point it right at the fly, every little quarter, 1/8 inch that I'm moving, that fly's moving as well because I'm retrieving line, okay? When I get a fish, and when I feel a bite, I try not to strip right away. I might lose fish because of this, but I try not to strip right away. A strip set is best, but I will use a strip and then a pull, and I will pull to the side, and I will fight. A lot of cutthroat are small, so if you want to see them in your hand, you're going to want to use a softer rod. I want a faster tip, but a softer rod. And you want to be able to strip and pull, and if I keep that line in the water, like if I've got a fish on and I've got the rod up like here, and that fish jumps, instantly what happens is I got slack between that and the water. I don't want that, because that, when he lands, he's got all that slack to slip the hook, to do an alley-oop or give it a shake. But if I've got it in the water, even if he's coming out, I don't have that slack there. I can keep stripping and have a better chance. Now, if a fish rushes me, I don't have to just stand there and take it. I can run away. I can go right up onto the bank. I want to stay tight. As a matter of fact, that fish I lost because I didn't do that, right? So these are just like little tips that might help you out when you actually do get a fish, right? So I want to have that. I want to have the rod almost laying on. I want to have the tip in the water. I want to retrieving it. And unfortunately, you might have to learn a different skill for this type of fishing because you will get broken off if you're not careful, especially like all my fishing goes across into rainbows and lakes and everything else too. So you have to develop what's called a light hand on the right hand. So basically, if a fish blasts your fly, you don't want to be pinching it against. You want to be able to slide that line right out of your finger, right? And when you're stripping, don't have it on the tip of your finger. It's got to be in that crook, because if it's in the tip of that finger and you get that one that blasts you, it's coming off, and now it's you in the eye. You have no control again, right? Let's see what else I got here for you. That's envy. What?
That's great.
Go ahead.
That's not a Palmer shield, is it? Or is
Yes, that's a Palmer chenille. This is envy. It's as in green with. This tail is stuff called, what did she say it was called? It's called Baitfish Emulator by Hairline. The original pattern had angel hair, just the green angel hair. It's really flashy. The underbody is silver chenille, just like the number 9. And then the stuff over top is actually black Palmer chenille, but it comes off as green, okay? And then the bead is silver. Deb inadvertently tied me a bunch of envies, and they had a gold bead, but they work too. So now we have envy and greed, okay? There's Johnny with a nice fish, and you can see he's got his streamer rod pinned to him, and then he's got his nymph rod there, right? And that's another egg eater. Now, here's a perfect example. Here we have a creek, place to park my truck, and then this is winter time. So in the winter time, I'm not going to fish much right in the creek. I'm going to get away because they're cold-blooded. Chances are that's snow melt. So the fish don't mind going into different temperatures, but they'll avoid it if they can because they're cold-blooded, right? They don't really want that shock to their system. So in the summertime, I'm going to get closer to the creek so that I've got the ability to have those fish going in there to cool the water, okay? Now this is the epitome. Remember how I said you find a good spot and fish it? That's about the 9th time there. I've never caught a fish there. But I will keep going there because it's got everything that I want. It's got that sloping beach. It's got some baseball-sized rocks. It's got the creek nearby. So this is a viable spot just because I still believe at some point I'm going to catch cutthroat there. I may catch a mess of them there, right? It's just, again, it's putting your belief in what works. Tim, staying low. This is actually a bull trout he's got here. It's funny because I can look at all these pictures. I know exactly. I think that was like 6 years ago, but I know exactly what's going on. I can't tell you any of you guys' names, but I know exactly what's happening with the fish, right? But again, staying low. That's what got him that fish. He was literally had the leader coming in the eyes, and he was just going to lift the cast again, and it took right in front of him. That's a minnow eater from the Harrison. Cast long. That's Deb. She's doing, and here we have the classic sloping beach. You can see that there's small, this is the ocean. You can see that there's small rocks in here, but as it goes out, there's a few larger rocks. There's weeds there, which hide forage. If you can find, in the ocean, if you can find an oyster bed is a really good place. If you find old broken shells even, you know, you can tell that were old oyster shells. That's a good place because a lot of forage hangs out in there. There's little depressions and things in places that they can get caught up in and stuff. And that's where those sculpins are, and that's where those small bait fish are, and things like that, baby crabs, all that kind of stuff, right? Now this one here is a real nice fish. Now you can see there, that's not a fly, that's a bead. So I'm a heathen. I'll fish beads on the fly rod too, I don't care. Not very often, but for the most part, you cannot beat a bead. I got buddies of mine, like I'll stick to the tied egg, and they'll just clean my clock with that thing, and I don't care. Sometimes you got to go out and get them. And you can see this water is kind of dirty here. Deb and I had it in our heads that we were going to go fish. There's one spot we wanted to get to, and it had rained, and then it started to drop. So I figured, okay, it's time to go. We got there. We couldn't get to that spot. And there's a big set of rocks in there that I'd never caught a fish in at lower water, and I just threw that bead up on top of the ring, and bam, that thing hit. And that's probably about this long and like this. Like that's a 4.5 pound fish.
Just to clarify, just because some of the guys here are pretty new, by beads you mean trout beads?
Yes, there's a picture here. Oh, and when you're out there in the fall, there's other guys out there looking for fish too. Be careful. Keep your head on a swivel. Yeah, don't get too caught up. I remember my buddy Randy telling me a story. He's on a river, and there was houses on one side. And he's fishing away, and he's got his rain gear on. There's the river and everything, the sound of the river. And there's a lady that comes across, and she's going, and he's looking at her, and he's fishing. And she comes a little closer, and he finally goes, takes his hood off. He goes, what? She says, there's a bear right beside you. And he looks, there's a little sapling right on the other side of it. He would have stepped right in that fish that bear was eating. So keep your head on a swivel, carry bear spray, go with someone slower than you, carry a knife so you can stab him in the leg, right? This is a pattern of mine. Oh, I come up with stupid names, but this one I call Floon's Fancy, okay? And it's just the gold chenille, and that's the long palmer chenille up top and for the tail. And then there's another one I call Floon's Fancy 2, as in T-O-O, and it's got the gold long palmer chenille for the wing and the tail, and the silver body, and they both work. So that's a good option for when you want to fish without a bead, when you got shallower water and grass. Now I put this picture in here. These are soft hackles. Now there can be times where you hit a fish, and it's the only fish you've hit today, and he won't come back to the streamer even if you change. Stuff like this can be really good options. This is what I call silver on silver. It's just basically a mylar pattern with mylar body with silver oval tinsel brought up it, little pinch of black dubbing in behind, and then some ringneck pheasant in front, right? Just like the hen, just one or two turns of that. And I cannot count how many times that I've had that in the box, hit fish with a streamer, change, and then just go to that and just let it swing in there, and just like a little hand weave to stay tight, and it just straightens out. That fish will take that because they're conditioned to eating insects, right? So things like that, having a good follow-up, like a 1-2, can be really helpful at times, right? This is a flashback caddis. That's a pattern that I actually picked up off of a calendar that I got given to me for one time. And I saw this guy's fly box, and he had a whole bunch of them, like a whole side of it. And I thought, well, there's got to be something to this. So I started tying them. And basically, deer hair tail, there's you can't see it in here, but there's a gold piece of mylar that goes up, red rib, that's peacock herl in the back, and then a little bit of a partridge coming out, and then dubbed with hare's ear on the front. Now the nice thing about this pattern is you can swap those two colors, tie them in 2 or 3 different sizes. Now you've got damn near a whole box of flies, right? And some days the green's on, some days the tan's on. I'm a big fan of, for tan or for hare's ear, I'm a big fan of the March brown color. It just seems to be a good color that works for me all over. Now, remember I showed you that one fish that looks like from the ocean? This fish is from the ocean. So like when someone says to you, it's a sea run, it's got yellow fins, it's a sea run, it's chrome, and this and that, you can see there's not a hint of a slash here, but what I do have is that long maxillary, right? This is 2 of us going fishing in the boat, so we've got rods for nymphing, that's the nymph rig, and then we've got lines for casting. So we want to be set up if we're going for a dig, because there's going to be places where we can cast and retrieve, and there's a place where we can drift the fly as well, right? That's another rainbow. Again, you can see the maxillary. It might be hard to see there, but the maxillary comes up more in line with the eye rather than going past. That's that male from that female that I showed you before. That's in the same spot. I caught him second. Here, this is a trout bead setup. He was saying that you didn't know what beads, may not know where beads are. Basically, I've got about 6 inches up the line. I've done a double overhand knot in the tippet. I put a couple of split shot above. I've slid this bead up, tied the hook on, and then you take and put a piece of a toothpick in there, jam it in there, snap it off. Now, guys say, oh, you should have it 2 inches above or whatever, because then they grab it and then you get the fish in the outside of the mouth. That's fine for me, but I don't like losing nothing. And if I peg it down here, I get those white fish. I can get them, and they'll take the beating. I get them right in the chin, right? So, oh, hang on. Is that it? Hang on, did I get it small enough? Again, this is in the ocean. This is actually my daughter's place in Qualicum. This is a perfect cutthroat beach. There's a creek to the left, and it goes for miles and miles and miles. And the coho get in here and stuff too. I haven't caught too many coho, some of the greenbacks, but I have caught cutthroat all here. And that it's just miles and miles of that slow sloping beach with a few big rocks here and there, some baseball-sized rocks. But you can see that gradient with this type of rock structure is fantastic in the ocean. Here again, this is just netting a fish. You can see how I've got that off. If I want to take a picture or something like that, I can just let go of the net and just let it float in the river. Now, this is a perfect example of that water's coming towards me. So where's that fish going to lie? He's probably going to lie just off the tip of this piece of rock here, right? I can't fish that from there. So basically, I'm going to have to find myself a way to get across the river and get up in front and present it so that I can have the fly in, use my slack to get it down so that by the time it comes back down there, I've got it drifting naturally so that the fish can pop out and take that there. I just wanted to just show that. I've got a couple of lie things here. Another good, this is the ocean again. This is another great beach. And again, with the stripping basket, if you're going to fish the ocean, barnacles, man, they'll kill your fly line. And now a fly line's well over $100, right? So you want to save your lines, right? But it's another great, there happens to be a creek in behind me here. And just another way, I've got that slow gradient beach. So here I'm probably going to wait out till I get about here and then cast to water that I can't see the bottom of, or to whatever I see moving in the surf. Here, I'm throwing the fly up to the right here, and I'm lifting, and I want to drop it down, and the fish came out. You can see that little indent in the root there. The fish is right there. So for me to be successful, I needed to actually put the fly up here and lift up and get it and allow it to drift and get it down, and then try and not be there, give it a dead drift, try and not be in contact with the fly, but try and not move it right at this point. So in order for me to set up to do that, I had to put the fly up here to be able to manipulate it, to get it down, and then drift it so that the fish doesn't know that I'm on the other end of it, right? Another nice cutthroat. This is from the ocean. Now, this fish I caught on the island. Now, remember I said there are some monstrous cutthroat around. I was steelhead fishing. I was fishing a 3-inch long intruder fly on the 8 weight. That fish beat the hell out of that RPL 8 weight. I went with the guy's boat I'm in. His name is Dennis. He's deceased now. He's steelheader on the board. And he says, "What do you think that is?" And I'm like, the thing is just going ballistic. It's flying 4 feet out of the water and stuff. I'm like, "I don't know, man." And he says, "Is it a brown trout?" And he says, "No." And I says, "Is it steelhead?" He says, "No." I bring it in. He says, "That's a cutthroat." And I was just like I had caught 9 steelhead that day, and I don't remember those, but I remember that. Like that's incredible. You get up into seashell into some of the big lakes up in there, Saginaw Lake and stuff like that. They got some big cutthroat in there. Powell River is another good place to go hunt big cutthroat. KCK, that's Kelly Davidson's fly. That's your cutthroat color. You can see how that stuff, that red in the back, it's like a stats, right? And I trim it off. The whites, being able to see that white string seems to help for that pattern. So underneath that mallard that's on the top, there's also 2 pieces of crystal flash. So, and then that's just a turn of red in front, swept back, put the crystal flash and the mallard on top, and Bob's your uncle until he's your aunt. And that thing is really good, especially in the Nikomin area and in the Harrison River itself. Very good fly. So it's called Kelly's KCK, Kelly's coho killer, but I call that particular dressing, because there's all kinds of them with purple in the back of that, but I call that Kelly's cutthroat killer. These are how patterns develop. These are, I just grabbed some pictures and stuff like that. I tried a whole lot of stuff, and these patterns will still work. Actually, those ones with the red bead, fantastic fly. They take coho and cutthroat still. It's just as time goes by, you move away from things. And I sort of move away from plastic beads because I find I fish a lot in bad, crappy areas with bad backcast places, and it's working, and then suddenly I don't have a bead because I smashed it on something, right? So that's why I like the metal beads over top. That's just a nice picture of a cutthroat. And you can see, it's just a green diamond dub leech with some flashaboo in the tail. So there's no bead on that, right? This is fish I caught many, many years ago, but sometimes you can see the grass. Sometimes a bead is not your friend. You're just not getting enough of a retrieve out of it before you're grounding out. There, remember I said about that fly? There it is right there. And you can see she's in the tube. She was in the ocean when she caught that, right? So that fly is a really good fly. That's Arizona semi-seal. That's all it is. Little tuft on for the tail, and they're just dubbed on and brushed out with that red bead in behind. And that is actually, you can see that's quite a big hook. That's because we started tying them for coho. That's a really good coho fly as well. Remember I said I caught that nice fish that day? You can see in the front of that, there's my fly. There's my fly. But there, that's a bait hook with a piece of yarn. Somebody got him and that fish snapped him off, right? And look at how thick that line is coming off that. That fish was no slouch, and that was that day that I said we had to do the retrieve as fast as we could, right? But yeah, you can see that is one portly fish, right? More fly evolution. I've caught fish on most of these flies, right? You know, here and there. I mean, you saw that in the fish's mouth just a couple of pictures back, right? This is another good spot. You can see that we've got the water coming in here, and most of it's going past here, but it creates this dead water here, and the cutthroat love that dead water. Similar to coho. Coho are very similar too. They like that slow, sluey water. Blow this up a little bit. Fry guys. So I just wanted to make a little, when I brought this up, I made a note to myself to bring this up. You're going to the river, you're having success. The first fry out were the chum fry. So you're going out there and you're fishing, you're looking at the size of the forage, and you go, okay. So you start with a fly that big, you're catching fish. You come the next time and you're smart. You're thinking, okay, well those fry are actually going to get bigger while I'm at work. So I'm going to go the next time, I'm going to time a little bit bigger. So you go and it works. So you're thinking, well, this time they're going to be a little bit bigger. You get out there, it stopped working. Stop working. You put it on fish, they're not taking this fly. What is going on? Fish, they're still fish. They can still get on. People say with sturgeon that you can take and just put a chicken on a hook and throw it in and you're going to catch a fish. They're just like any other fish. Any fish can get on a certain set of forage and stay on it and won't move from it for love or money. right? Same with the cutthroat. And chances are what has happened is the coho fry have come out without you noticing. And now they're back onto a smaller pattern, and you've missed it. And this goes back with paying attention. Look at everything. Everything has merit. Birds are good. Herons are good, because that means there's forage there, especially the mergansers. I talked to a fella, and he says, don't you think birds scare the fish away? I says, no, I don't think so at all. I've seen them so many times in the same particular venue, because a merganser ain't swallowing a 12-inch cutthroat. He's just not. Seal will chase him off, but not birds. So yeah, so that's just something that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, that in the progression of hatches, there's the same thing that goes on with salmon, right? The exact same thing going on here. Heron, you can see this particular fish is kind of cool, because you see the scar he's got there? You can see that it's been healed for so long, the spots actually continue on through the scar. But that's another nice, pretty fish. That's an estuary fish. That's actually seaweed there. And the tide was coming in, and I knew the fish were in there. I could see them, but I'd be casting, and I'd only get about 4 or 5 pulls before I'd pick up a weed, because the kelp and all that stuff was floating in there too. But I kept at it, and we managed to get some real dandies there. Again, I mean, the amount of spots and how different these fish look is just incredible. Again, I've got this fish on. I've got that rod low, and I'm trying to get up. And then I landed this fish, but I ended up almost running over Deb, trying to get away from it. Because the rod, if I'm going to reel a fish in, I'm either going to switch to the strip, but this was a large fish, so I didn't want to strip to the fish. I wanted to be able to have it on the reel, because like when you're fighting a fish, the basket is no longer any good. You're throwing that line wherever. So now you're stapled to where you are, right? So that's another little rainbow. There's a really good fry pick. This is spring. It's not a big fish, but you'll learn that each one is a little bit of a conquer moment, because you may have been casting at several fish before you actually found the combination that opened it up. And a lot of times, by the time you find the combination, it's over. So then you got a lot to think about between now and the next time, and be ready.
What the heck is that fly?
That's actually a minnow, and I've got some of those. I've got a box that I'm going to pass around here. I'm almost through here. I want to get on to questions and stuff like that anybody wants to ask. What time are we getting at here? Holy crap. Another ocean fish. Now, remember what I said about hiding stuff?
Thank you very much.
Very welcome. About hiding your stuff, I put this picture on the internet. Now, I also photoshopped this. In the center of that, there used to be a big pillar there. But there's some guys that I fish with that know where I was, know about that spot. So I wanted to post this picture, so I literally photoshopped that pillar right out of there. It was right here. So we're all doing it, right? We're all doing it. Here you can see a fish that's really fattening up. This is, again, flesh and egg time. I don't know, is that it? Okay, I got one more little story. And I'm going to just throw this one up for it. To learn nymphing to compete, I took a solid year, and I took my home river, and I was there as much as I possibly could. And I mean, I was there religiously, and I got good. I got to the point where I was putting this fly in the water, and I could tell how deep it was. I could sink it to any depth. I could put it anywhere. I became quite proficient at it. So I went fishing, and there's this fish that I at the end of the day, I got in there, and I hooked him. And that rod folded. I'm fishing a 3-weight, and this thing just goes right over. And I'm like, oh, and I look, and I see the side of this fish, and off it comes. I'm like, oh, so I throw a bunch of casts in there, and he won't come back. He won't come back. So I'm like, so I got to go. It's getting dark. I head home, and this fish is on my mind. I get up in the morning, this fish is on my mind. I'm at work, and this fish is on my mind. I worked for myself when I was working, and I finally said, forget it. And I used to drive around with the vest and the rod and the boots and the waders. It would smell like old waders on one side of my truck, right? So I said, that's it, I'm going. So I headed down, I get back out there, I fish, and I get back down there. Now it is raining. It's raining like real hard. And this river's rising, and I'm getting down to where the place where it is, and I start fishing, and I look, and I can see the water starting to color. And I finally get in there, I make that cast, bang, hook that fish, get it up, and I'm fighting it, probably about 3.5 to 5 minutes. I fight this fish. I get it in the net, and I got a picture in here somewhere. I'm not going to bother finding it. But I get it in the net, and I'm breathing hard, like we're both. I can look at the fish, and we're both at the same time, at the same time. And I look up, and this big cloud comes down. I caught that fish within a window of about 35 to 40 seconds before there wouldn't have been enough visibility to catch that. And that, guys, is what it's all about. I sort of just got a little bit of goosebumps there, but that's what it's all about. When you fixate on something, you go about it and you put everything you can in your favor, and it works out, you know. And that's what I was hoping that some of you guys would come away with this from here, is to get a little energized, to take a little bit of the baloney that I just finished slinging at you guys, and maybe some of it's going to work for you guys, and get you out there. Now, there's just one more thing that I had that I wanted to say before this all ends. And, okay, so I got asked to speak about something I feel passionate about, and I thought, sure. But I also wanted to share why I think cutthroat are important. I think they're canary in the coal mine. When they start thinning out, being seen less, harder to find, it makes you start looking at why that is. It makes you be concerned for the diet, which is in turn dictated by the forage, which is in turn dictated by the source of that forage. And on our coastal waters, that means salmon, steelhead. Cutthroat rely on the return of salmon in mass in all kinds of ways, some of which we touched on today. So if I get you interested in pursuing this fish by hand-in-hand association, I get you interested in things like herons and salmon fry, spawning fish, bug hatches, river purity, and more. All these things that create a great fishery all go hand in hand as an ecosystem, just like the inner workings of your own body, that when one thing starts failing, it can all start tumbling down. The lack of salmon allowed to return to the rivers needs addressing. Cutthroat and a lot of things depend on it. Bring back our chum returns. We've got to stop that chum fishery. It's ruining steelhead. It's ruining, those fish are what feed our ecosystem. We have what's called gradient rivers here. Everything gets flushed out. Without the salmon coming back to return it, to bring us nutrients back in, we got nothing. We've got a bunch of streams that bring water from top to bottom. It's been proven that DNA from rivers are deposited up to 10 miles away through bird feces, through bears carrying carcasses, bear feces, all that stuff. The whole thing's a big thing. For us as cutthroat fishermen, and what I'm hoping to make out of you as cutthroat fishermen, we have to protect what we love, okay? And that doesn't mean just barbless hooks and releasing everything that we catch and trying to be nice to the fish. It also means trying to work for these fish, trying to do the best that we can. Have a voice, send an email, do something. Don't do anything but talk to other people. Tell them how great this thing can be.